Yes, I met with amazing person. Bit like, well, I won't say because I don't want to be personal from her point of view. But has coped with a partner, a husband. She's a Christian lady and most earnestly, fairly traditional. Looked after her husband when he became demented. And is glad for his sake that he's gone now. She coped astonishingly with him at home. He did go into a special facility, rest home for dementia, and died thereafter. I don't know how long. If I just guess out the blue, I'd say a year or so. Perhaps two. So she's gone through an incredible time of caring for this chap as he deteriorated. Years at home. And I don't know what to say, just a wonderful person to have coped with such a situation. You could say, well, it didn't cope in the end, but it gets too much, just too much. And of course she was elderly herself. So bright, so confident of God, and her view of God in a very understood Christian way, very believing in Scripture, and even in church, despite the appalling problems of church existence and life. Amazing person, trusting utterly that he's now in heaven. And of course in her heart that she will be there too. God's caring for her and her ex-husband. Well, her husband is now dead. Or now with the Lord, as she would say. All good. Such a release. I went to see her because of this last recording was on my mind. Well, I have another lady that I may have mentioned too, with her grown-up children now, who's looking after her husband, who is extremely demented similarly. I mean, in both cases, the men were benevolently so, having been earnestly Christian in their life. Different type of Christian. Different denomination. In both cases, quite comfortably off families. With children grown up. In one case, the grown-up children still living at home. In the other, well, at least one of them I met, extremely good person. I'd almost say wonderful person. People are wonderful in different ways, aren't they? And people are tragically disturbed in different ways too. I was within a couple of hours, or perhaps just an hour. Yeah, close on, just less than an hour. I was with someone I was in a shop. You could say a tough part of town, I suppose. And someone came up to me out of the blue. I don't know them. A violent lady who screamed insults at me, waving her hand in a derogatory gesture. I just stood there. I was in a queue waiting to pay for the goods I was buying. And it absolutely came out of the blue. I mean, lots of people around. It was a busy shop. There was two counters checking out. And I was standing there, and just some lady in front had just was cashing up, and I was waiting behind, and she said something nice to me as I waited there, because I had a very heavy object, and I put it on the counter, and she said, no, it's okay. And, it's all beautifully civilized society, and then out of the blue comes this violently verbal attack from a complete stranger. Of a particular ethnic group that might hate what I represent, because I'm a tall European man, but an older man, but perhaps I look as though I've got it all together, and perhaps she comes from a very lacking society, this lady. Fiercely violent and full of hatred. I didn't say a word, I was stunned. It would just come out the blue. And she could have turned extremely physically violent, and by the grace of God, she didn't. But I can understand hatred, of course. Whatever it was in her mind, she just had to give expression to it and shout at me. For the space of about 15 seconds, I suppose. Well, perhaps less. But by the grace of God, it didn't develop into anything worse. And, a couple of staff behind the sort of counter place and, checkouts. Didn't say anything. They sort of know me by sight. That's all. I've been in there a good few times, but they have many customers, And I sort of skirted round this lady and the chap she was with. I thought, is he dangerous? I don't know. Didn't seem to be. I didn't, look too much in their direction. Fortunately, they were occupied then at that point with their goods from the next till on. And I went out of the shop and drove away, But astonishing experience to be attacked in that way out of the blue. I mean, I don't feel any hatred towards the person. I mean, I'd like to be better protected from such things happening, but of course, I wouldn't like to face it again, in case it got out of hand. And, I got injured, or, yeah. I haven't really thought about it, but perhaps it's as well to remember that many people, unlike myself, are constantly vulnerable to such situations because they live in very tough circumstances. Perhaps they live on the street themselves and have to cope with, well, one might say, violent people or people that are mentally ill, and perhaps it's something of the same. For these violent moods that take a person are incredibly destructive of everything, themselves as well, of course. To live in violence, to be violently disposed is a terrible burden to be anything but joy and happiness, to experience the fullness of being the one hating. So thank you, Heavenly Dad, for this experience and for your safekeeping. And don't know quite what to make of it except to trust it in your hands and hope, of course, that it doesn't happen again. And perhaps I should avoid such a shop in future. I don't need to shop there, I suppose. I mean, it's never happened before. But in fact, the incident's not happened before. It's a bit like what religious Christians would say was a satanic attack. It's in such incredible contrast to the previous couple of hours or hour or so, where I'd visited this lady, and she's a good soul, one that's looked after a demented husband who died a few months ago now. He died. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Let me pause. Well, I'm thinking, dear one, that we're met from time to time with the inexplicable. And not just on the negative side either, but the inexplicably wonderful, miraculous blessings as well. Many, especially as we open our eyes increasingly in a purpose to thank God always for his love and care and provision. I was going to say it's a very sad world in many ways, but wonderful as well. And we won't understand how every piece of this puzzle, so to speak, fits together, and why and how, and what its purpose is. But we can see and experience enough, if we've a mind to, such goodness of God that we can trust him for the inexplicable. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure we could be confronted with a string of inexplicable things that shatter our confidence and trust. And by the grace of God, to most of us, most of the time, it doesn't happen. But it does sometimes. And our heart goes out to people in such dilemma. But again, earnestly wanting to trust God for it. For what else would you want to do? Trust that there is no God that would care and be protecting and give meaning to that which one doesn't understand. What good would that achieve? Be madness, wouldn't it? So we purpose to trust and love wherever we can. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad.